Hello, I'm Toycat, and a house is often one of the biggest purchases that people will make using debt in their lifetimes, often hundreds of thousands of it, but it's something people can justify to themselves by saying it's a repayment mortgage, I'm just borrowing money and then paying it back. And this is technically true, but I love to see the weird shock of people, like this post from the First Time Homebuyer subreddit, from someone saying, wait a minute, I made my first mortgage payment, but 90% of that went to interest and only 10% to the principal. They said they made one payment so far of $3,300 on their $420,000 loan, and they only knocked off $450 of the loan balance. Fannie Mae says 90% goes to the interest and 10% to the principal. By the way, Fannie Mae is a ridiculous name for a bank, but this is American, we're fine. And so is there any way to change those percentages? This is actually just the reality of buying a house. Something a lot of people don't look at is the total cost of borrowing, because you might look at a mortgage calculator and see that £100,000 over 25 years is £556 a month, think that sounds about reasonable, but actually miss that you are borrowing a huge amount of money, and this particularly stings at the start of a mortgage because that's when you've borrowed the most. So £100,000 is fairly small for a UK house, sadly, but over the full term you'll pay £166,000, but most of that is accrued in the early years, which means that although you're paying £556 per month, 4.5% interest, on £100,000 is £4,500 of interest in your first year, which means even though you'll be making £6,000 in mortgage payments, you actually only end up paying £2,217 is that off your total mortgage, which is really, really, really low, right? Because yes, a mortgage is a huge amount of debt, and even at really low interest rates, which mortgages don't really have, you still spend a long time paying it off. Now let's take a more standard mortgage in the UK. It's more like £300,000, and it's more like 30 to 35 years, and all of a sudden that £300,000 you borrowed to buy a £300,000 house actually costs you $546,000. A lot of people vastly underestimate the actual cost of a house because they don't realize that your mortgage debt starts very high and stays very high, partially because you're making huge payments towards it, which only eventually go downhill. Over the first year of paying £1,500 per month, that's £18,000 per year, you will only pay off £4,900 of your debt. You basically get nowhere in the first year or the second year or the third year. The biggest, most drastic points are the last year, where you have 18k of debt, you make 18k of payments, and then you end up with no more debt towards the end. This is the reality of buying a home, and it's one of the reasons why, even though a mortgage is one of the best investments you can make, it is, it's one of the safest investments, it's got some of the lowest interest rates, it is still a very, very, very expensive financial decision. I mean, if we go, a step even further here, right? Like, if we look at actual mortgage rates, which are, by the way, incredibly high right now, 6.6% for a 2-year fix or 6.17 for a 5-year fix. If we use those actual rates instead, the numbers get even more ridiculous. The mortgage from $1,500 goes up to $1,800, but the amount that you end up with at the end of each year still stays roughly the same. It actually changes a surprising amount because it's called amortization. Basically, over a 30-year mortgage, you're making 360 payments, but as you're making each payment, they have to calculate the interest for that given month at the same time, and they need to make sure that your money goes towards the interest first. This seems messed up. Like, a lot of people say, shouldn't your money go to the principal and not the interest? Isn't it messed up that the bank forces you to pay that interest first? However, bear in mind, the principal and the interest don't actually mean anything necessarily. Like, when you borrow money, when you borrow £300,000, it doesn't matter what if that is interest and what if that is a, repayment on the house or repayment on the original, the principal versus the interest, if you want to be American. But it doesn't really matter which of those two things it is, because ultimately, you're still paying back a debt regardless. Whether you're paying money back from interest or from the debt itself, you are still paying that money back regardless, and so $659,000 is the cost of a £300,000 debt right now, which is a lot, right? And so this is one of the reasons why, if you have a lot of money, if you're buying, let's say, a £35 million house, making mortgage payments makes a lot of sense during super low interest rate times, but if you're borrowing even just, let's just say, only borrowing 30 million of this, you've got 5 mil in the bank, so you just need to borrow 30 mil for your actually, let's say you get a mortgage for half of it. You get the best mortgage available. It's only for £17.5 million, which seems like a good decision, if you ask me. Did I get the right number of zeros there? Nope, I got one few 2 zeros. So, if you borrow £17.5 million over 30 years, you might think this is the smartest decision you can make, and you might get an interest rate as low as 4 or 5%, but you're still going to be paying £33 million back, including making payments of 1.2 million every year. So making 1.2, basically £1 million of payments for 30 years will pay off a debt of £17 million, which is why the only reason to leverage yourself is if you have absolute concrete ways to guarantee you can make more than the bank interest rate. Borrowing from the bank is a really smart thing to do if you can guarantee you make more than that. But as interest rates creep up, almost anyone can make more than 2% a year investing in some generic stock market or even gold. You know, like basically any investment at 2% makes more sense than borrowing for a house. But at 6%, honestly, you know, with stock markets aren't doing the best around the world, it starts to seem a lot. It seems a lot more like actually having a mortgage is maybe not a good idea, which is why house prices, at least in the UK, are starting to see a fall. They've gone down a whole 1.1%, which doesn't sound that particularly high, but keep in mind that everything is going up in price. We have crazy inflation. It's falling, but prices are still rising. But while we're seeing crazy times of inflation, where things are worth 10% less than they were last year, houses are worth, 1% less than last year, where, everything's cost 10% more. Houses cost 1% less, which means they've actually gone down a lot more because the price of a house is not just the price. You know, the price of this 35 million house in Mayfair, or this let's go for a more budget option, shall we? I guess I'll go for this £27.5 million house if I must, if I'm really making these giant budget cutbacks, which, by the way, look at the ridiculous shape of this place. It has a ramp on it. You know, who has a ramp in their house if they live in London? But you can see that this ridiculous £27.5 million house, if you had to live there because you were really pouring it out, would still cost you, this 17.5 million at 5% would probably cost about the same as, like, I don't know, take off like 5 mil of that for a cheaper house. It costs about the same. Actually, it goes significantly down. I was trying to make the reverse point, I think, that like you could borrow 12.5 million at 6% to buy this house, and it probably costs about the same as borrowing 17.5 million at a much lower percentage. In fact, it's cheaper to borrow 5 million more at 4% less interest rate because, yes, if you have a lot of money, you can leverage that into more money. But when interest rates are high, you'll be paying for it. Basically, that is what the world is at right now. And this is this is interesting to me that like house prices are going down, even while rents are going up, even while all these things are going up. House prices are decreasing because they're getting significantly more expensive. This is a problem we kind of have as a society. Every house price that exists is based not on your ability to stump up 30 million. It might be at 30 million, actually. It's not based on your ability to stump up £3 million for this lovely old barrack yard in Belgravia, or this circus road in St. John's Wood, or, if you want this lovely flat in Nine Elms, and no one actually, the vast majority of buyers, I should say, do not have £3 million sitting around. Instead, that £3 million is based very loosely off, we can use Google for this calculator. Okay, I want to make, my mortgage is going to cost £3 million, and so I have to make payments of... Is that really correct? Wow, interest rates are messed up, huh? Oh yeah, £3 million if I borrowed the entire thing would cost me £14,000 a month. But more people can pay £14,000 a month than can pay £3 million up front, right? And so that is what the actual cost of this apartment is based on. How many people are willing to borrow £14,000 a month to live here? And surprisingly, the answer is more than one. Or more than zero at the very least, if they're managing to sell these, which is kind of nutty, but it's basically the thing of our housing market. However, if people use their mortgage payments as a calculation, so the max I'm willing to pay, I'm really frugal, I can only pay 14.5 grand a month on my mortgage. Then while the interest rates are low, I can borrow 4.7 million. Actually, let's just bring the mortgage down to a more reasonable 25 years, let's say. Well, actually, no, I think 30 years is the standard. So while interest rates are low, I can afford to borrow up to £3.6 million while making those same payments. But since payments are my crucial thing, because I only earn... 16,500 a month, and I'm very responsible with my money. As interest rates go up, the amount you can borrow goes down. My 5 million became 3 million, became 2 million, might become 1.9 million, and so the cost of housing is going up, and that's why, in general, if you want to be immune to all these systemic factors, borrowing money, generally not the best idea. Do you need to borrow money for a house? Yes. Have I borrowed money for a house? Also yes. But it is one of those things that can really easily, you can really easily convince yourself, this is actually a good idea. Wow, borrowing money actually makes me rich. That's what all the rich people do. That's what makes Donald Trump so much money, or whichever famous celebrity you want to use. But actually, paying 23 million, Let's go up to 6%. Paying 37 million for 17 million pounds worth of purchase, actually pretty dumb. In fact, to use a fun example here, so let's just say that you borrow 100,000 pounds or 10,000 pounds worth of credit card debt. Because if you borrow 10,000 pounds at a mortgage rate, 4% over 30 years, I guess we'll use 100,000. Then you make a normal £477 payment, and you pay 171,000 over 30 years. And honestly, it's just about justifiable because by the time your mortgage is done, 171,000 is worth less than now. At 2%, it's certainly justifiable. At 1%, it's very justifiable, etc., etc. But if you're borrowing anything more than that, some people borrow 8% for a car, some people borrow 12% for a dodgy refinance loan, and some people are paying 18% every single year on a credit card. If you were to borrow that money, if you borrowed £100,000 when you were, say, 18, and you just tried to pay off that credit card debt at the minimum payments for 30 years, then you would be paying £542,000 for something that you only got £100,000 of joy out of, and that is the reason why. That is the big reason why, in my humble opinion, it is generally a better idea to use money, because 100,000 costs 100,000 money now, or 542,000 money later, or if you're really lucky, only 171,000 later, which is why mortgages are a good tool if you need them. But if anyone tries to convince you that mortgages are actually really, it's smarter, even if you have the money, you might as well finance it, then they probably have something else going on you should be cautious of. Just like how you should be cautious of, oh, this is actually a really cool balcony, right? Just like how you should be cautious of living in Riverlight Quay. It's got a B for bathroom here, but not over here. Is this the guest bathroom? It's got four bathrooms, right? Unless this is something else. Do you need 4 bathrooms for a 3-bedroom house? I would love to know your thoughts, internet. Is that a reasonable amount? 3 bathrooms, 2 en-suites. What's the B room then? I need to find out. What is a B room? Let's go. So this is a bathroom. This is a bathroom also, the lovely triangle one. I actually kind of like that view. I would love to use that bathtub all the time. We got ourselves a 3rd bathroom. What is the B room? I need to know. Is B for utility? Is it the golf room? Have they really set this up as a golf studio? What a ridiculous idea. If you live in I guess that's probably a communal room. This is a nice luxury apartment, it seems, and it can be yours for just £3 million plus, obviously, a few thousand a year in, it's a really good decision, okay? You can just trust me on this. Just like how you can trust me that, if you're gonna buy in London, just type minimum price and then go price filter, lowest price first, just live wherever it is. You wanna live in this garage? Man, that's a good deal, right? You get some electrics in there, you put a little space heater in, and now you got a place you can store your car and sleep at the same time. Seems like a good decision to me. And all you've got to do is live all the way out in, Norwood Junction. It's not horrifically far out of London. It's only zone 4, I think. So, yeah, you want to live in zone 4 for £10,000? Then you don't have to worry about all this mortgage nonsense. You just get you get income potential. You form a part of a terrace it's a great idea. You should totally come live in this garage. Or if you insist on being fancier than that, you can live in this auction flat, which, as you can see, for just £53,000, it's delightful. It's got room for improvement. It's got do not use written on the boiler. It's got a range of amenities, such as a visual-only boiler, such as this lovely cutout above the washing machine for some reason, such as 2 doorways. How many doors do you have in your house? Is it more than 1? I don't think so. They've got skylights in the attic. This is a beautiful house, and it can be yours for just £35,000, which is a lot less than that fancy pants apartment, I reckon. Anyway, yeah, thank you for watching. Third channel, I've got some real work to do today, so goodbye.